He has to go to a nursing home. That's what my daughter said. Calm. Decisive. Like I wasn't sitting right there at the same dining room table I built with my own hands. She said it while holding a glass of red wine, in front of a realtor. And Kyle, my son, just nodded, like they were talking about a stray dog. They didn't even look at me. She said it like I was some problem to be quietly removed. Like I wasn't holding the coffee mug I gave her when she got her first job. Like I hadn't carried her on my shoulders through the zoo when she was 5 and scared of the zebras. I didn't interrupt. I just sat there and listened. They kept talking like I wasn't in the room, discussing square footage, listing timelines. Sarah even laughed when the realtor asked if I'd need help transitioning. They didn't ask me if I was okay with it, because they already had what they needed. Let me back up. My name's Henry Turner. I'm 58 years old. I was an iron worker most of my life, and I've lived in the same house since 1993. It's not a mansion, just a solid, red brick colonial with a creaky porch and the best damn cherry tree on the block. My wife passed 4 years ago. Stroke. 1 minute she was here, the next she was gone. Just like that. The house got quieter after that. Emptier. But I kept going. Fixed things. Read the paper. Built birdhouses. Normal stuff. Then the visit started. Sarah came every Saturday. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to check in. Kyle would swing by when he wasn't too busy, usually when he needed to borrow something. A car. A few $100. My truck jack. I thought maybe they were just trying to reconnect after their mother passed. Turns out, they were planning something. It started small. Sarah would casually mention how a house this size must be hard to maintain. Kyle would joke about me tripping over garden hoses. Then came the pamphlets, Graceful Living, Silver Horizons. All those brochure names that make you want to set something on fire. I told her the pamphlet was cute. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the bird bath. She laughed, said I was being dramatic, that I should at least look. That's when I should have known something was wrong. A few weeks later, she brought someone named Amanda to the house. Said she was a community nurse who specialized in elder care. Amanda was polite, asked a lot of questions. Too many. Asked if I ever forgot where I put things. Asked if I had trouble remembering meals. Asked if I'd fallen recently. I told her the last time I fell was off a ladder putting up Christmas lights. In 2011. She didn't laugh. She took notes. Smiled at Sarah. Then left. That night, I locked the front door and placed a wedge under it. Something I hadn't done since the 80s. A few days later, Kyle dropped by with beers. We watched a game, talked about the past. It felt normal. Then he handed me a stack of papers. Just some boring estate stuff, he said. Sarah said you'd be cool signing it. I didn't want to read it in front of him. Didn't want the hassle. So I signed. A few places. Then a few more. He smiled, clapped me on the back, and left with the whole stack in his hands. The next morning, the Wi-Fi was out. Then the cable. Then the gas. Kyle said he'd switched everything to auto pay to help out. The yard guy stopped showing up. I called him, and he said the contract was canceled. I said by who? He said, your daughter. Then came the Wednesday night when I swore I heard the front door unlock. I was up late, watching an old war documentary in the den. I heard the knob turn. Light footsteps on hardwood. A pause. I called out, Kyle. No answer. When I stepped into the hallway, no one was there. The next morning, the drawer in the study where I kept deed records? Open. One folder missing. That's when the dread really hit me. Then came the day. Last week. I was told we were having dinner together. Sarah, Kyle, me. Just a nice family meal, like old times. Sarah even said she'd cook. When I walked into the dining room, there was a man I didn't recognize sitting at the table. Blazer. Clipboard. Realtor. I stood by the chair. Sarah poured wine. Kyle had that smug look he always gets when he's about to ask for money. That's when Sarah said it. Dad's not safe here anymore. He has to go to a nursing home. No explanation. No apology. Just that. I looked at Kyle. He looked away. The realtor smiled. We've got 3 offers already, but we wanted to give you time to prepare for the transition. I said nothing. I just stared at Sarah. She smiled like this was an intervention. You'll be more comfortable, she said. Less to worry about. And Ridgeview has excellent memory care options. I don't have memory problems, I said flatly. Kyle jumped in. You left the stove on last month. I was making popcorn. Sarah laid a hand on my arm like I was a confused toddler. We just want what's best for you. I pushed her hand away and walked out to the porch. They didn't follow me. The next morning, I went to the mailbox and found a change of ownership letter from the county. My house, had already been transferred into a living trust. Sarah had power of attorney. Kyle had listed himself as trustee. They'd sold it to the trust for $1. One single dollar. Everything they needed, I'd signed. That stack of papers Kyle brought over just to help. It had all been orchestrated. The betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was engineered. I didn't call the police. Didn't throw anything. Didn't even raise my voice. I sat at the kitchen table. Looked out the window at the cherry tree Liz had planted the year we moved in. Sarah walked in. The movers will be here Sunday, she said. And the Ridgeview intake appointment is Monday morning. Just pack light, okay? I nodded. Then I stood up. Let me help you with your coat, I said. She smiled. Relieved, probably. She didn't notice the folder missing from the bookshelf behind her. I didn't fight them. I let them dig their own grave. And when they came back from their weekend getaway in Charleston, the screaming started before they made it to the front door. That's when I knew. I'd already won. When Sarah knocked on the front door that Monday morning, I was already gone. Not a note, not a goodbye, not even a half-finished cup of coffee in the sink. Just silence. I'd left the porch light on out of habit, and something about that made me smile. The house was technically theirs now, at least on paper. But that didn't mean they understood what it held. I didn't go far. Just far enough. I checked into a motor court 20 miles east off Highway 74. The kind with wood-paneled rooms and humming soda machines, and an old motel clerk who looked like he'd seen things. I paid cash. Used the name Harlan, a variation of mine nobody'd recognize. I had a driver's license from another state I kept for reasons I won't explain, and an email no one knew existed. The woman at the desk looked at me like she'd seen a dozen men like me. Quiet, older, alone. Need Wi-Fi? She asked. No, I said. Not really. Most of my days started the same. Eggs at the diner down the street, long walks through neighborhoods where no one knew my name, and hours spent in that little motel room watching what my kids posted online about their new chapter. On Wednesday, Sarah posted a photo of the staged living room. My living room. Liz's piano had been hauled out, the bookshelf turned backward to look sleek, and our old wall clock replaced with a flat white canvas that meant nothing. The caption read, "Letting go is never easy, but sometimes necessary. New beginnings ahead." I stared at that photo until my knuckles went white. Then I logged into the online utility dashboard, an account I'd set up years ago and never shared. Still had admin rights. While they were sipping wine and high-fiving each other, I rerouted the mail forwarding address to the P.O. box I'd quietly opened last fall, just in case. Their escrow package would be missing several key documents by the end of the week. But I didn't touch the finances. Not yet. Not even close. That night, someone knocked on the motel room door. It was late. Too late for housekeeping, and I hadn't ordered anything. I waited. The knock came again. 2 raps, deliberate. I stood, slipped quietly to the side of the window, and angled the curtain open by an inch. It was the motel manager. Just him, holding a clipboard. "Sorry to bother," he said when I opened the door. "Just checking if you wanted to extend the stay. I give discounts for weeklies." I nodded. "Yeah, another week." He nodded back, like we'd reached some quiet understanding. "You seem like the kind of man who likes routine," he said, almost respectfully. After he left, I sat back down at the table and opened my notebook. A plain black one. Nothing fancy. The kind that doesn't need to explain itself. I wrote down 3 names. Underlined one of them. By Friday, Sarah and Kyle had taken off for Charleston. Little weekend getaway before the deal closed. I know because she posted a story. Her, on a beach patio, holding a mimosa, with the words, "Finally exhaling." Kyle was in the background, wearing a Hawaiian shirt and the same sunglasses he used to steal from my glove box. They looked free, giddy, like they'd pulled off the heist of a lifetime and were now toasting to their success. That photo would have crushed me 2 months ago, but now, it was just confirmation. I had a window, and I planned to use it. The first place I went was Ridgeview. Not as myself, of course. I wore a polo and khakis, carried a cheap legal pad, and introduced myself as Mark Liddell. Said I was vetting facilities for my uncle, who'd recently suffered a fall. They smiled wide, offered me coffee, gave me a tour like I was someone important. Some of our residents really loved the community activities. Bocce, bingo, movie nights. Lots of ways to stay active. Sure, I said. But what about privacy? Oh, of course. The suites are completely independent. Family can visit anytime, but security's tight. Cameras at every hallway junction. We have digital keys and facial recognition. Facial recognition. Interesting. The woman beamed. Would you like to place a deposit to hold a unit? We're almost full. I smiled. Not just yet. That night, I burned the Ridgeview pamphlet in a steel bucket behind the motel. The paper curled, the flames popped, and I watched the image of a grinning senior couple holding smoothies dissolve into ash. I didn't stay in the room much after that. Some nights, I walked the back streets of my old neighborhood. Not close enough to be seen, just enough to feel the air again, to see what they'd changed, to check the light patterns in the windows. One night, I saw Kyle's car pull up to the house. He was alone, walked to the front door, let himself in with the key I didn't know he had, and stayed for about 20 minutes. When he came out, he was on the phone. His voice carried just enough. She's gonna love it, he said. It's practically turnkey now. And Dad's out of the way. Ridgeview's already processing his stuff. He laughed. They think he's some lost old man. That was the night I added Kyle's name twice in the notebook. The second time, it was underlined. By the second week, I started mailing letters. Not to Sarah or Kyle. Not yet. I sent them to people they wouldn't expect. People from the past. Former neighbors. A retired estate planner. A certain county clerk whose back porch I rebuilt 15 years ago for free when a storm ripped it off its hinges. Each letter was polite. Short, but specific. Please find enclosed documentation related to the sale of 39 Sycamore Lane. If you have any record, anecdote, or relevant detail about the estate prior to March of this year, I'd be grateful for your input. A few days later, one came back. Handwritten. Signed by the retired estate planner. It read, "You should know your wife's will did not specify joint authority to transfer the house. Based on the version I filed, any override requires 2 living parties or a court ruling, neither of which happened." He included a copy. Signed. Dated. Stamped. Now we had a crack. They didn't just take the house, Liz. They tried to erase the parts of us they didn't understand. The place we built with late-night drywall and stubborn paint colors, and that uneven stone path I swore I'd fix every spring. They turned it into a property, a bullet point in someone else's retirement plan. You'd hate it now. They planted artificial succulents in your planter boxes, covered your lattice wall in fake ivy. I should have stopped it sooner, but I thought they still had pieces of you in them. I was wrong. The final time I walked the property, I didn't get out of the car. I just sat at the end of the block, windows rolled down, engine off, watching a prospective buyer step through the open house with Sarah and the realtor trailing behind like tour guides at a theme park. She waved through the window. Not at me. At the buyer. And I realized they'd carved me out so cleanly, so surgically, they didn't even consider I might still be watching. That kind of arrogance can only come from one thing: comfort. They were too comfortable. They thought it was over. I let the engine idle another 5 minutes, just listening to the house creak in the wind. Before I drove away, I parked by the cherry tree. Liz's tree. The one we planted the day we closed on the house. The bark had split a little in the middle from last winter's frost, but the carving was still there. Our initials, crooked and faint, but real. I ran my fingers over the groove. It was rougher now, weathered, but still mine. They could list the home, stage it, sell it. They could take my name off the deed, but they couldn't take this. Not yet. It started with the letter I mailed directly to the buyer. No return address. Just a typed envelope with the escrow office's seal and a clean color copy of Liz's original will tucked inside. A yellow post, it was attached. Just 4 words, printed in clean block letters. Ask your attorney first. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. That document, along with a subtle highlight over the phrase, "No sole authority to transfer property without spousal representation," did all the talking. 3 days later, the buyer backed out. Sarah tried to play it cool. She posted a smiling selfie with the caption, "Life hands you lemons. We hand them back with receipts." But the tags were gone. No realtor mention. No escrow celebratory banner. Just her, alone, in front of a house she no longer owned, pretending the walls weren't starting to lean inward. But I wasn't watching from a distance anymore. That same week, I made a phone call. Nothing fancy, just a prepaid burner line registered under a fake name. I rang the city planning department, asked to be patched to residential compliance, and left a recorded tip regarding a suspected unpermitted structural expansion on the rear porch of 39 Sycamore Lane. I used just enough lingo to make it sound like a competing realtor or nosy neighbor. I didn't mention names, but I didn't have to. Their names were already on the paperwork, the very same paperwork they'd used to push me out. The inspection was scheduled 3 days later. Not a fine, not yet, but enough to freeze their next showing. Then I planted the story, not on social media. I went older, analog, slipped a manila envelope into the community bulletin board drop box at a local church. Inside was a printed sheet titled, "Who Really Owns 39 Sycamore?" followed by public records, screenshots of the Ridgeview admissions form, and a grainy photo of Sarah touring the property with an out-of-town buyer. No one knew where the post came from, but the church secretary made sure it was tacked up with a thumbtack before Sunday service. By Monday, Sarah was getting phone calls she didn't expect. One from a local reporter she used to intern for. Another from a friend of Liz's who left her a voicemail saying, "You never mentioned a transfer hearing. I thought Henry was doing okay." I stayed busy. I planted another breadcrumb at a law library 2 counties over. Left a file folder on a shared research table labeled Turner v. Turner, Contested Deed Exhibit D. It had no return address, but someone opened it. The next day, a legal blog posted an anonymous entry about quiet reversals in elder probate abuse cases. Sarah never read legal blogs, but her lawyer did. That week, Kyle's car got booted. Not because of anything I did, at least not directly. He parked in a loading zone while taking a call from the escrow officer, thinking he'd be in and out in 10 minutes. He wasn't. By the time he came outside, it was pouring. Heavy spring rain, angry and cold, soaking through his fancy button-down in seconds. The boot clamped over his will like a bear trap. He stood there for 40 minutes waiting on a locksmith, phone raised to his ear, alternating between shouting and pacing in circles. A neighbor recorded him from across the street, posted the video with the caption, entitled "House Flipper Melts Down Over Parking Ticket Karma." I watched it 3 times. Inside the house, the code on the front lockbox changed, not because Kyle changed it, but because the realtor did. She was tired of the inconsistency. Said it was the 3rd time she'd shown up to find keys missing, lights left on, or the alarm system disabled mid-showing. She told Sarah she needed clarity about ownership. Sarah had none to offer. Still, they kept trying to play it off. Sarah doubled down on optimism. A new post went up, another showing booked. Back on track. Good things take time. This time I replied, not from my account. I didn't have one anymore. But a mutual acquaintance shared the screenshot with me later. A user named Homebound Truth commented beneath Sarah's smile. "Does Ridgeview let you sell from assisted living? Or is that just a Sarah special?" It got 2 likes before she deleted it. Later that week, Sarah filed a motion with the county claiming interference in lawful sale, citing unauthorized contact with buyers and false claims of estate ambiguity. But she couldn't name me. She couldn't prove anything. The documents were real. The trust had gaps. And technically, I hadn't done a thing she could show. Her attorney replied with a cautious email. "You may want to prepare for the possibility that the house is not legally transferable without Henry's signature. I suggest we halt public listings until this is clarified." For someone so obsessed with control, silence is the loudest sound they can hear. Kyle, on the other hand, wasn't silent. He stormed into the title office 2 days later demanding answers. Someone had tipped off their buyer, and now that buyer had filed a formal complaint. Kyle accused the clerk of mishandling records. The clerk calmly replied, "Everything looks in order, except the override signature." There's no court stamp. That's not my fault. Kyle left red in the face. And when Sarah called to ask why the title hadn't updated in the system, she got the same answer. I don't understand, she said, pacing outside the escrow office, not realizing her voice carried through the cracked door. We did everything we were supposed to. We removed him. He signed. No. The officer corrected her. He initialed a medical intake form. That's not a property transfer. By now, cracks weren't forming, they were splitting. Sarah stopped posting. Kyle went quiet. The house sat with a for sale sign, but no scheduled tours. Even their realtor stopped answering emails. Still, they didn't know where I was. They didn't know I was across town in a rusted-out Ford pickup, eating pancakes at a counter while Sarah sat outside the courthouse filing yet another inquiry. She didn't see me then, but later that week, she almost did. I went to the VFW to pick up a notarized affidavit from Dennis, an old friend from my Navy years. I thought it would be safe. Low profile. No familiar faces. But someone called my name. Henry. The voice came from behind. I turned, slowly, careful not to flinch. It was Greg Alston, retired HVAC tech. Lived 2 streets over when we still held block parties. He looked me up and down. Didn't expect to see you, he said, suspicious, but not unfriendly. Last I heard, they moved you into that place up in Ridgeview. I smiled calm. Guess you can't trust everything you hear. He squinted. You living back around here? Just passing through. Greg leaned in slightly. You know your daughter's been scrambling, right? People are talking. I'm not surprised. He looked at me harder now, more curious than accusatory. You planning something, Henry? I didn't blink. Planning? No. Just waiting for them to figure out what they did. Greg chuckled once. Well, they will. Later that day, I saw Sarah in a parking lot outside a municipal office, standing in a long shadow cast by a flagpole, phone pressed tight to her cheek, pacing. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, but even from the distance I could see strands falling loose. Her face was drawn, mouth tight. Her lawyer was saying something on the other end of the call, but she wasn't listening. Not really. She just kept scanning the lot. Then, she stopped. She turned, looked in my direction, not at me, but toward the rusted Ford parked 3 rows down. She didn't recognize the truck, didn't recognize the man sitting inside, but her shoulders pulled back. Her face tightened, and for 1/2 second, her eyes froze. Not in recognition, but in something else. Something older. Something she hadn't felt since she was a kid and knew she was caught. I didn't move, didn't wave, didn't start the engine. I just waited until she turned back around, swallowed hard, and walked inside like the ground might shift beneath her. That wasn't recognition. That was dread. And dread was enough. While Sarah and Kyle clinked overpriced wine glasses in Charleston and posted, "Rest days are best days," under a picture of scallops they couldn't pronounce, I stood in a fluorescent-lit bank vault next to Liz's sister, watching a woman in horn-rimmed glasses place our family's final weapon into a safety deposit box. She slid the envelope across the cold metal shelf like she was delivering a verdict. The signature page was crisp, notarized, dated that very morning. Restatement of trust, sole authority, Henry Turner. I didn't say a word, just signed, nodded, and stepped out into the daylight like I hadn't just rewritten the ending of their story. See, Sarah thought the house was just wood and wiring. Something you could stage, polish, sell for equity and ego. But this wasn't just real estate. It was our history. Every scraped knee on the porch, every casserole left cooling on the side window, every coat of paint Liz insisted we roll together even when the color dried wrong. This wasn't just property. This was a timeline. And they tried to sell it for a weekend of Instagram reels and wedding tasting menus. Leslie, the document examiner, had sent me the report days earlier, neat as a bullet hole. Black ink circling forged signatures like ghosts raised just long enough to betray themselves. Liz's initials had been copied from a hospice document. Mine, stolen from a Thanksgiving card I once scrawled without reading. They tried to raise the dead and erase the living in the same motion. But the county doesn't erase so easily. Especially not when someone whispers in the clerk's ear, gently, anonymously, and with just enough paper trail to demand a second look. I didn't need to storm into the office. I didn't shout. I didn't make a speech. I just left a copy of the revised trust in the mailbox behind their building, along with a note clipped to the top. Updated instruction attached per amended directive. Initiate hold on transfer pending full verification. The clerk followed protocol. The title froze. The sale crumbled like wet cardboard. The blog post followed 2 days later. I didn't write it. I didn't have to. An anonymous tip, which may or may not have included a flash drive, found its way into the inbox of a hyperlocal reporter who specialized in quiet chaos. Her words, not mine. She printed it all: the intake form discrepancy, the trust inconsistencies, and a headline that hit harder than anything I could have said myself. Daughter lists father's home while he recovers in care. But was he ever incompetent? They couldn't hide after that. Realtors pulled their listings. Their buyer dropped out entirely, citing unresolvable ethical concerns. The staging company sent an invoice for services rendered, adding a late fee after 2 ignored payment requests. And then came the audit, a slow, red tape-covered avalanche triggered by a single Freedom of Information Act submission I delivered in person, sliding the sealed envelope across the zoning office's metal counter and saying nothing more than, "This one deserves a second look." The clerk nodded. She didn't ask my name. I didn't offer it. But all of that, the noise, the paper, the public cracks, was just groundwork. The moment I'd been waiting for came a week later. I parked the old Ford 2 blocks up Sycamore and walked the rest of the way under early morning gray light, the kind that makes everything look half-finished. My boots scuffed the sidewalk like I'd never left. I didn't carry luggage or keys. Just a manila envelope with 3 documents inside: the revised trust deed, the formal motion of property reassignment, and a printed notice of termination for non-compliant co-residency. Legal language for get the hell out. I rang the bell. It was Sarah who opened the door. She looked older in that moment than I ever had. Her hair was tied in one of those tight buns she wore when pretending everything was fine, but her eyes were puffed and pink-rimmed. She froze like I was the ghost of Christmas past and future rolled into one. "You," she started, but her voice caught on the edge of disbelief. "You can't be." I raised the envelope, slow and steady. "I can be wherever the title says I live." Kyle's voice boomed from deeper inside, already brittle. "We have rights. You were declared incompetent." "No," I said, stepping inside without asking. "You had a brochure and a plan. What you didn't have was a legal transfer, a real trustee, or my consent." They both stood there, clutching the remains of the dream they'd built on sand. The kitchen still smelled like furniture polish and cheap ambition. "I built this house with Liz's hands in mine," I said, my voice level. "We laid the tile together, chose the colors. We carved our initials into the cherry tree in back before Sarah was even born. And you tried to flip it like a used mattress." Sarah's mouth opened, but no words came. "You didn't sell the house," I continued. "You sold your mother's memory for a weekend in Charleston and a new ring for a man who's never lifted a hammer in his life." Kyle's jaw twitched, but he didn't move. The silence between us stretched. "Here's how this ends," I said, placing the envelope on the kitchen counter like I was setting down a verdict. "You've got 2 weeks to leave. After that, the locks change. I won't call the sheriff. But I won't need to." "Dad," Sarah's voice cracked on the word. "We were just trying to help you." "No," I said, staring her down. "You were trying to help yourselves." I walked past them both, letting the old floorboards creak under my boots. Every step echoed like a timeline snapping back into place. I sat in my chair, the one that still leaned slightly to the left because Liz insisted we never fix it, said it gave the living room personality. I didn't ask them to leave. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just sat still, calm as Sunday, and said the last thing they ever expected to hear. "I'm not going anywhere." They didn't argue. They didn't scream. They didn't throw a thing. Because they knew. They knew the grave they dug for me was shallow, and they'd forgotten how good I was at climbing.